Did you know that colouring with watercolour pencils is really easy to do? Today I've got some tips to share with you using the new Woodless watercolour pencils from Altenew. Welcome back. It's time for another Take Two with Therese at Altenew, and I've got some beautiful cards to share with you. And today is a very special day. We're actually hopping along with Kathy Racoosin, and this is part of the colouring challenge, and it's the Watercolor Therapy Blog Hop that we're joining in on. So I hope you're going to hop along with us today. So head through the link in the description below and you'll be able to join the hop and see more inspiration. And today I want to share with you just how simple watercolouring can be. These pencils from Altenew are so easy to use. There's 24 colours in the pack. They are in the Altenew colours that we know and love. What I'm doing here is actually just laying down a base of colour. I'm not covering the whole flower, and I'm using, I use the Coral Bliss, and then what I'm doing is adding some darker red colour. I think it's the Heartbeat colour, and I'm kind of adding the darker colour where I think the shadows on the flower will be. Now I've got my watercolour brush. I do actually use a well for my watercolour brush. I don't use the water that's within the brush, although you can. I find that I get better control if I dip my brush into a well of water, and then I can use some paper towel off to the side to actually remove some water if I think it's a little bit too wet, or to remove some colour off the tip of my brush if I think it's too bold, and I just will kind of chop and change along the way. The great thing about watercolours is that they are very forgiving. So by adding the two colours before I added the water, it made it easier for me to blend the two colours and get my shading. You can certainly do it one colour at a time. There's no set rules. This is watercolour paper. It's from the paper pad at Altenew, so it is going to tolerate a lot of water. But what I find when I'm using the pencils is that I don't add a lot of water, so it dries really quickly, so I can actually add more colour on top, almost immediately. Although typically I do like to wait a little bit for the colour to dry so that I can have better control over the colour I'm going to add. Something else I like to do is leave some white highlights on, especially when I'm trying to get that loose watercolor look. So by not adding too much color in certain spots, it adds some lightness to the flower, which is what I've done here. And I'll also add some real dark shadows. And what I'm doing here is using tip to tip technique. So I'm using the tip of the brush and the tip of the pencil, picking up the color off the end of with the end of the paintbrush and dropping that in, and that just allows me to have better control over where I'm putting my shadows, and I can I go into the creases, so the darker shadowed areas of the image, and draw the color away, and that just adds depth. This is jet black. I used jet black for my shadows, so don't be afraid to go dark. You don't get much darker than black. Now to add my sentiment, I've got the Celebrate Us stamp set, and I'm using my Misty here because I don't want to have to start again, and stamped in some Obsidian ink the second portion of the sentiment, which says "For You." I want to add some ink splatters, and one thing I do find is that you can guarantee it's going to splat all over your sentiment and the center of a flower, so I tend to cover these up. See, look, I would have just got a big blotch in the middle of my flower. So by protecting them with a piece of cardstock, it just saves that drama. We don't like drama. I'm die cutting now this is from the same Celebrate Us sentiment, and it says thankful, and it's a two-piece, so it has a shadow and the top word. I did the shadow in some jet black cardstock, and the top word thankful I did cut out of the watercolor paper because I didn't want to have two whites in my finished card. I'm adhering those together with some liquid glue, and then I just can add this to the front of my top fold card and pop my sentiment up. on the front of the card. And I did use some black foam squares to do that, because I find if I'm popping something up that's jet black, the dark squares behind it, it just adds more of a shadow. It doesn't add a shadow. You can't see them. You're not as likely to see them. So I want to change things up a little bit now. I'm using the same stamp set. It's a different flower, and I've stamped it out twice this time. I've used the watercolor paper pad cardstock again, and this time I'm using the simple colouring stencil and adding a base of colour to both the flowers and the leaves. So I did one version a little bit lighter than the other. I used blush for both the pink bases, and to make it lighter I just used my ink blending tool and didn't add as much ink. To make it darker I added more ink. But on the leaves I used the Limeade on the lighter version and the lime on the darker. And what I like to do is just keep my post-it notes in place while I turn my stencil around. It just saves me having to recover everything up. How simple is that? This time I'm going to add colour very similarly. So I'm adding the pencil, the watercolour pencils, directly over top of the blended ink that I've done. And that's just, oh, here's my little Maggie. There's Mags. It's Bobby McGee, because she's a bobtail. She's pretty shy actually. I don't know if you've seen her before. You might have. Anyway, she's walking over to get up on the cat tree, the cat pole that's right beside me. And then she hangs there and plays with things. Makes a mess sometimes. So I'm doing exactly the same thing here that I did on the previous flower, but I'm not going to have the white highlights this time. So this is a really easy way to add a base of colour and then add some simple shading. So I did the same thing again. I added the two colours to the flower before I came in with the water brush, and then when I want to add my shadows again, I'm going to be using that tip to tip technique, so the tip of the brush and the tip of the Woodless watercolor pencil. Now these, I mean, it says that they're woodless, so you get lots of colour in the pencil. The pencil is basically all colour, so you get good bang for your buck there, but the outside of it is shiny. You are not going to get dirty fingers from holding onto the pencils as such, and they sharpen really easily just with a normal pencil sharpener. So I did the same thing again, just came in with dark shadows, but I did also come in with my pencil afterwards, and that just added a bit of texture to these flowers. So hopefully you'll be able to see that in the photos at the end, but you really can see that added texture in real life. It's really quite beautiful, and it's a great technique to use your pencils for, and gives a different look to your flowers. And now I'd love to know which version you prefer. Is it the washy kind of watercolor look, or is it the one where I used the simple coloring stencil first? Let me know in the comments below. Now all that's left to do is add a sentiment. I've got the Waterbrush Hello Die and a sub-sentiment that I've stamped out from the Hello and Hugs stamp set. One of my go-to sets for sure. Alright, don't forget to join us in the hop. The link will be in the description below, and there'll be all the links for the products that I've used today, both here and at the blog. I look forward to seeing you there. Till next time, bye!
Hello there! Did that video just spark your creativity? And do you want more project ideas and inspiration videos too? Well, if you do, please make sure that you subscribe to the Alternate YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you do click that notification bell so you don't miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye!